Well, I want to welcome you to today's episode of our podcast, Taking Your Next Step. In our previous episodes, we've been laying a foundation, really, of this entire thought, taking your next step, basing it basically on the invitation that Jesus gives us to follow me. Now, we want to consider today, in today's episode, this thought: it won't happen by accident. Now, just go with me for a moment and reflect back. Look in the mirror and look back into your past. The goals that you have accomplished and the dreams that you've seen fulfilled, have any of those just happened by accident? I'm sure most of us would say, no, we've put some sort of effort, some sort of planning, lots of time into those. We could even look at the everyday task of life. Maybe you have homework. Maybe you have projects that are due. Can I say the essay is not going to write itself, right? It's not going to happen by accident. That research paper, not going to happen by accident. It could be things at work. You know, you have certain projects at work they would like for you to get done. Well, it's not going to happen just by accident. Your room's not going to clean itself. Your car is not going to clean itself by accident. I think we understand the idea that there has to be some sort of planning, some sort of effort and time that is invested into it. So as we look back over, the majority of the time, things do not just happen by accident. So as we move forward in our journey, I want to introduce a word to us. One word that we will focus on throughout this year. We will mention it. We will bring it up through episodes. I believe it's a word, honestly, even outside of this podcast, could be very helpful to you in your everyday life and also your spiritual life. I believe this word will help us in this journey of taking our next step in our faith and relationship with Jesus Christ. So drum roll, please, right? The word is this: intentional. Now, the word intentional is not a hard word to understand. It's not a word that I need to begin to share the origin of it, begin to list some long definition. The word intentional does mean this: to be purposeful. It means to be diligent. It has the idea of being deliberate, or I like this word that describes it: calculated. It's anything the opposite of an accident. It's planned. You think about a murder charge, and we would think about a person being charged with that, maybe in court, and the idea is there: was it by accident? Was it some sort of maybe manslaughter? Or was it something that was premeditated? Was it something that was calculated? It was very intentional. It was not accident. It was not just negligence with some type of manslaughter. And you think about the sentencing phase, even that, if somebody does hurt someone or kill someone by accident, the sentencing will be less than if they did it intentionally, or premeditated murder, as we would refer to it. Why? Because they put a lot of time and thought. They thought, how can I do this? They put in the energy and effort of, how can I cover my tracks? How can I get away with this? And so there's a lot of energy, a lot of time that goes in to that. And so if you and I are going to take our next step in our faith and our relationship with Jesus Christ, can I say it will not happen by accident? There's just too much that's working against you and working against me. You see, Satan is working hard to keep you from moving forward, from taking that next step. I can think when I used to deliver pizzas way back in the day, and I remember going out to so many doors, and even now as we go to apartment doors and just try to talk with young people, students at college campuses, behind the door, you'll hear dogs sometimes, and sometimes they sound very big and they sound very ferocious, and you almost just want to leave the door and go somewhere else. Sometimes those dogs, they sound a whole lot bigger than they really are. You open the door and there's a little 5-pound little yapper down there, but he sounds, or she sounds, like she's 200 pounds, right? You may refer to those as ankle biters. Well, the Bible describes Satan as a roaring lion, walking about seeking whom he may devour. And just like those ankle biters who want to keep you from taking any more steps forward, they want to keep you from moving forward, that is Satan. He is a force against us, and he works against us to keep us from taking our next step. We identified in our previous episode of distractions that are working against us, distractions that are hindering us. And we talked about these distractions not being bad things. Many of them are good things in our life. And can we just be honest? Right now, there are so many distractions with the political division, the hatred in our country, the coronavirus, the lockdowns, people out of work, layoffs, just so much going on. The worry, the stress, the fear, all this is distractions. Distractions that Satan is using, also distractions that we're allowing sometimes to keep us from taking that next step. We have our flesh that we have to battle with. That is working against us. So, bottom line is, we have to be intentional if anything is going to be accomplished in our life. And so, how many times have you realized you wanted to make a change? Maybe it's New Year's, right? You make those New Year's resolutions and you realize, hey, I want to make a change in my life. Or maybe you heard a message, or maybe you read a book, or you heard something in class, or a friend, or whatever the case is. And you say, yes, I'm going to do this. And you get excited, right? I'm going to make this change. I'm going to purchase this stuff. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change my calendar here. I'm going to change the way I do stuff here. And you dive in head first. And you say, I'm going to change this, this, and this. And I'm going to do this, this, this. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to whatever it is. And then you realize a week in or a month in, you really fizzled out. What happened? You see, this is where, and I can just relate myself, this is where I mess up many times. I attempt to make too much change at once. I tend to really bite off more than I can chew. You think about, maybe, have you ever done this? You've maybe taken a big bite, and maybe you've been sitting at a table with family or friends, and maybe there's just enough on your plate. I'm just going to finish off that burger or whatever it is in one bite. It really could have been 2 or 3. We're just going to stick it in there, right? And you just start chewing and chewing and chewing, and you can't talk, you can't respond, your jaw starts hurting. What did you do? You bit off more than you can chew. If you had taken 2 bites or 3 bites, you honestly would have finished a whole lot quicker than taking that one massive bite. And so many times in life, I think we bite off more than we can chew. We want to make these changes versus just taking that change. We want to make all these alterations, but we really just need to do one and take what I'm going to refer to as baby steps. You see, the attempt at too much a lot of times eventually leads to nothing. And so what we'll be looking at as we think about this word intentional is this: intentional baby steps, which will lead to intentional steps that are accomplished consistently. And that's what we're looking for if we're going to continue to take our next step for Jesus. You say, well, I don't like to take baby steps. I like to take big jumps. Well, great. But many times I know in my own life, if I would just take the baby steps, I would see myself taking bigger steps. Think about the baby. As they begin to walk, they take small little steps and crash down. They pick up, they stand up, they crash down. And they keep going and going and going. So those baby steps turn into consistent baby steps, and those baby steps that are consistent turn into toddler steps that turn into jogging or running, or turn into leaping or skipping, and turn into big steps. I mean, where did it all begin? It began with those baby steps. And so those baby steps can always lead to bigger steps, and that's what we want to think about with being intentional, is being intentional with just a little bit. So let me read to you a verse. Proverbs 21:5 tells us this. It says, the thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteousness, but of everyone that is hasty only to want. Notice the contrast there between this, the diligent and the hasty. Diligent there means decision. It means a sharp decision. It was used to reference a sharp threshing instrument, but it refers really to an industrious person, that they make the decision and they do it wisely. In contrast to the person that's hasty. Notice the diligent person gets their goals accomplished, or whatever they're searching for or looking for, they achieve, versus the hasty person do not get it. Why? When you think about a hasty person, it's that quick urge, that just quick decision, that knee-jerk reaction. Many times we can make decisions based on emotions, and sometimes that's not wise. They need to be thought through. I like that word calculated. We need to sit down and count the cost and really do some planning and see how far can we really jump in. So the diligent here is in contrast to that of the person that's hasty, and the diligent receives their goals. They accomplish things. Just to read you a few other verses, Proverbs 10:4 continues on this same thought of the diligent. It says this: he becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. Notice the prosperity there of the diligent. Proverbs 12 verses 24 says this: the hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. So here the diligent are able to exercise authority. They're able to be put in charge or put over other people. Because of their decisiveness, because of how well they are and how intentional they are in accomplishing stuff. Verse 27 says, the slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious. And so we see that continual contrast there. And the verse 4 of chapter 13 is our last one. It says, "The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat." So again, the contrast there is that person that's intentional. They're calculated in their decisions. They're prosperous. They receive their goals. They're able to accomplish stuff in comparison to that person that is hasty. And so the diligent person is an intentional person. And so in order for you and I to be intentional, there's not a lot that is required. It's not like a long list. It's not that it's just for certain people. Really, it's number one is a desire to take your next step, a desire to be intentional. There needs to be a willing heart with that desire. And then there just needs to be some calculation. It needs to be very calculated. It needs to be a little bit of planning. There needs to be some commitment, some accountability, and maybe definitely consistency. That's greatly needed. You see, it won't happen by accident. We must be intentional. But let's slow down, okay? Let's remember that the Christian life is not a sprint. The Christian life is what? It's a marathon. And so you and I don't need to sometimes take a giant step. We just need to take those baby steps. And those baby steps done intentionally, consistently, will lead into bigger steps. And those bigger steps done consistently and intentionally will in turn lead into giant steps and giant leaps in our faith and our growth and our walk and what God can use us to do. So let's be very calculated and purposeful in the steps we decide to take as we walk through this journey in taking your next step.